My brother, a CIA agent, told me to disappear. But what seemed like a goodbye was a cry for help. He always saw me as the weak sister. To obey would be to admit that, but disobeying could cost our father his life. What if your own brother became your enemy just so I could save you? When I deciphered the message, I realized that the fight between us, it was the code we created in childhood. And that's when I understood my brother was sacrificing himself. But it was too late.
Before finding out what Elena is going to do, subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications because each new story here brings secrets, sacrifices, and emotions you won't forget. Her father's house was in Maryland, isolated, surrounded by ancient trees. When Elena arrived, the windows were dark. No sound, no movement. Her heart raced. She parked the car away from the entrance and walked cautiously, gun in hand. The gate creaked softly. The house exuded the familiar scent of aged wood and cold coffee. In the hallway, family portraits lined up the past. Her, Marco, and her father, smiling in different uniforms. It was as if the pictures mocked the present, reminding her of what had been lost. "Dad?" she called, opening the living room door. The man was in the armchair, awake, his eyes fixed on the switched-off television. "I knew you'd come," he said in a hoarse voice. "I got the message before you did." Elena froze. "The message?" she asked. He nodded, looking out the window. "Your brother said, 'The time has come.'" Elena approached, trying to control her breathing. "Time for what?" she insisted. Her father sighed, tired. "He just asked me to trust you and to remember the code." Elena frowned. "Code?" He smiled slightly, his gaze lost in distant memories. "The one from the games. The one you invented when you were little. It seems he still believes in it." A chill ran down Elena's spine. The childhood code. They used it to communicate without adults understanding. They replaced words with symbols, and common phrases gained secret meanings. If Marco had used it in the message, there was something hidden. She went up to her brother's old room. Everything was covered in dust, except for a box on the desk. Inside there was a yellowed letter addressed to her. "If this ever reaches you, it means everything went wrong. Trust only what we wrote when we were children." Upon reading that, Elena knew. Marco wasn't pushing her away. He was saving her.
She stood up and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman I saw there was a mixture of fear and determination. She was no longer the obedient agent, the shadow of her brilliant brother. She was someone who now carried the responsibility of deciphering a sacrifice, and perhaps the last hope of keeping him alive. He went downstairs and found his father asleep. He put a blanket over him and went back to the computer. He tried to access the CIA database, but something was wrong. His login had been blocked. "It can't be," he murmured. He tried another server, also blocked. It was as if someone was erasing his existence, just as they had done with Marco. Determined, Elena used an alternative channel created for emergency communications. She entered her brother's name and waited for the system to respond. "File does not exist." She gritted her teeth. "It can't be." She tried again. This time, the computer froze and displayed a black screen. In the corner, a sign was flashing. "Unauthorized access. This event will be reported." Elena's stomach churned. If the system was tracking her, someone already knew she was trying to find Marco. And within the CIA, that meant only one thing: a manhunt. She grabbed her bag and began gathering everything she could: computer, flash drive, ammunition. On the table, she saw an old photo, she and Marco as children, smiling under an orange sunset. On the back, the inscription, If all else fails, follow the shadow. A riddle within a riddle. Elena understood the message. The shadow was the nickname for an old emergency safe located in Warehouse 47, where Marco hid secret documents. The place had been deactivated years ago, but if the code remained, perhaps something was still there. Before leaving, she looked at her father asleep. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "I'll be back, I promise." But deep down, he knew that any promise in that world of shadows was a dangerous coin. The CIA building was silent as Elena entered through the service entrance. Wearing a fake badge, she walked through narrow corridors to the digital files room. The clock read 5:42. Each second seemed to echo too loudly. She knew she didn't have much time. He sat down at the terminal and began the search. Marco Torres. The system responded with a blank screen. No data, no record. It was as if his brother had never existed. Elena tried to open the audit logs, but found a series of altered dates and a digital stamp that chilled her blood. Wallace's signature. "It can't be him," she murmured. Wallace had been Marco's mentor, the man who promoted and protected him. If he was involved, the corruption was deeper than she imagined. The tension was rising. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. She minimized the screen and pretended to be reviewing reports.
Agent Torres? The familiar voice nearly stopped her heart. Wallace appeared in the doorway, a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What are you doing here so early?" Elena maintained her composure. "Checking for inconsistencies in the system." He approached, placing a heavy hand on her shoulder. "Inconsistencies or curiosities?" She forced a smile. "Just routine." But Wallace tilted his head, studying her. "Curious. I heard your brother has become a topic of conversation again in some circles. Have you seen him recently?" Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "No, sir." He nodded slowly. "Good, because if he gets in touch, he should let me know immediately." When he left, Elena took a deep breath, her stomach churning. Every word Wallace had said had sounded rehearsed, like a veiled warning. As soon as the hallway was empty, she returned to the terminal and copied the encrypted logs to a flash drive. The data confirmed it. Wallace had erased Marco's name from the system. As she left the agency, the sky began to lighten. The cold wind roused her from her apathy. Marco was right. There was an enemy within the CIA, and now she knew his name. In the car, he opened the flash drive and saw one last hidden piece of information. An address in Maryland, marked with the initials PG, Marco's code for Ice Point. A safe place, but only if the correct password was used. Elena started the engine and gazed at the horizon. The war, until then silent, had just begun. The clock was nearing midnight when Elena realized she was being followed. In her rearview mirror, distant headlights maintained a constant distance. No overtaking, no swerving. She took a deep breath and slowed down. The car behind her did the same. It was the definitive sign they were after her. She turned sharply to the left and entered a country road. Her father, asleep in the passenger seat, awoke with the jolt. "What is happening, daughter?" he asked, confused. "They found us, Dad. He tried to save us, Dad, but now we need to survive." Elena turned the steering wheel and drove onto an old wooden bridge. The sound of planks breaking under the wheels was deafening.
As soon as she crossed the bridge, she threw a smoke grenade out the window. The enemy car disappeared into the fog. Elena sped off for a few more kilometers until she stopped at an abandoned warehouse. Her hands trembled as she turned off the engine. The silence that followed was almost deafening. "They won't stop," the father said, breathing heavily. "As long as they think Marco's alive, they'll hunt us all down." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of the truth. She took the flash drive with Wallace's files and put it inside her vest. Then we'll disappear for a while. We need to understand what he knew. While her father slept, she reviewed the flash drive on the laptop. There were encrypted folders, but one caught her attention: Project Gladio. Inside, a list of names and dates, all agents supposedly dead or deserters. Marco was the most recent. At the bottom, a note signed by Wallace: elimination confirmed. Elena's stomach turned. Marco was alive when that note was written. If Wallace declared him dead, it was to hide something. She closed the notebook, determined. Ice Point, that's where we're going. Dawn enveloped them in silence as the car sped down the road. Behind them, the forest dissolved into shadows, and somewhere, perhaps too close, watchful eyes observed their every move. The shelter was hidden beneath the disused sawmill. Marco called it Ice Point because during wartime, it was where his father kept survival equipment. Upon arriving, Elena recognized the moss-covered iron gate. She typed in the old code, 1979, the year Marco was born. The lock snapped shut. Inside, the air was damp and cold. Canned food, ammunition boxes, and old maps covered the shelves. The father sat on a wooden bench, exhausted. "It feels like the past is frozen in here," he murmured. Elena turned on a flashlight and began to rummage through the room. Every detail seemed laden with memories and ghosts. She found a black notebook with Marco's name engraved on the cover. Inside, there were notes about CIA operations and infiltration diagrams. There were pages marked with symbols, the same codes from her childhood. She deciphered one of them. If they find out, the sacrifice will be total. "Dad," she called, showing the notebook. "Did you know about this?" He hesitated, his eyes clouded. "Your brother told me about the cell, said the agency was compromised. I didn't want to believe it until I saw Wallace on TV saying he was a traitor." A tear ran down the old man's face. "And I stayed silent." Elena sat down beside him. "Marco knew what he was doing. He tried to protect us." The father sighed. "I taught him to obey, never to feel. Maybe that's what killed him." The silence that followed was heavy. The past between father and children mingled with guilt and longing.
Suddenly, the shelter's generator flickered. Elena went to the panel and saw the digital counter light up. Someone had accessed the external system. The shelter was being tracked. "They found us," she murmured. She grabbed her weapon and ran to the hatch. Outside, two black vehicles approached along the dirt road. The sound of their engines grew louder. "Dad, get down to the emergency tunnel, now!" He obeyed with difficulty. Elena activated the generator's self-destruct protocol. In 5 minutes, the place would be reduced to ashes. As her father disappeared into the tunnel, she took one last look at the shelter. "I'm sorry, Marco, but I can't run away forever." She ran toward the tunnel, the sound of explosions echoing behind her. The sawmill collapsed in flames, illuminating the night. And for a moment, the reflection of the fire revealed a figure in the distance. Tall, standing, watching. It looked like him. The emergency tunnel ended in a fog-shrouded clearing. Elena helped her father climb up and looked back. The shelter was ablaze, consumed by an explosion that lit up the sky. For a moment, she thought she saw a silhouette near the fire. Marco. But when she blinked, there was nothing left, only the crackling of ashes. They followed a trail to a secondary road. There, Elena used a disposable satellite phone to access the contents of the flash drive. Inside, she found a voice recording. The sound was distorted, but unmistakable. Marco. "If you're hearing this, it's because I failed. There's an infiltrated cell. Wallace is involved. The project's name is Gladio." His voice hesitated before continuing. "Don't trust anyone at the agency, and if you get near your father's watch, look for the correct time." Elena looked at old Torres, who was walking with difficulty. "The watch," she murmured. "The one he never took off his wrist."
Her father raised his arm, confused. "This one?" Carefully, she picked up the watch and opened it with a knife. Inside, a hidden compartment contained an old microchip. Elena connected it to the notebook and saw a folder appear called Oasis. Inside, surveillance files, transcripts of conversations, and videos, all proving the existence of the traitorous cell. In one of the videos, Wallace appeared in a meeting with 3 senior agents. They were talking about eliminating the traitor who knew too much, Marco. "My God," Elena whispered. The evidence was irrefutable. Marco wasn't a deserter. He was the only one trying to stop the corruption.
As she watched, her father began coughing violently. She held him, worried, but before she could speak, he pointed to the screen. "He knew, Elena, and you need to finish what he started." The words came out between short breaths. He quickly packed everything away, feeling the weight of duty. The pocket watch, the flash drive, Marco's voice, everything converged on an inevitable destination. "We're going to Washington," he decided. "Wallace wants a ghost? I'll show him one." At that moment, far away, a tracking signal flashed on a dark monitor. Voices in earphones echoed, "Torres is alive! Repeating, target confirmed!" Dawn was painting the sky as Elena pulled up onto an empty road. The car was almost out of gas, and her father slept exhausted in the passenger seat. The distant sound of helicopters began to echo. She knew what it meant. The CIA had launched a manhunt. "They're too close," he thought, adjusting the GPS. He found a secondary road that led to an area of abandoned mines. It was risky, but it offered cover. He accelerated, his tires kicking up dust. The helicopters were closing in, their spotlights sweeping across the forest. Suddenly, the car radio crackled. A cold voice echoed. "Agent Torres, turn off the vehicle and surrender. You are surrounded." Elena clenched her teeth and turned off the radio. "Not on your life," she murmured. Her father woke up startled. "What was that?" She replied without taking her eyes off the road. "The sound of hell coming." A shot hit the rear tire. The car skidded violently, spinning on the gravel before coming to a stop against a tree. The father screamed in pain. Elena got out, pulling him with difficulty. The spotlights blinded them. Soldiers emerged from among the trees, weapons drawn. "Surrender, Torres!" shouted one of the agents. Elena looked around, calculating. A narrow crevice in the mountainside caught her eye. A mine entrance. She darted towards the ground, kicking up dust, and ran toward the opening, pulling her father with her. Gunfire erupted behind her. Shards of stone rained down on their heads. "Go, Dad, go!" she yelled, pushing him inside. In the dark interior, the sound of footsteps echoed. Elena breathed rapidly, tasting the metallic sensation of fear and adrenaline. When they finally moved away, she leaned her father against a damp wall. The noise of the pursuers was getting closer. "They won't stop," he murmured. "Neither will you," she replied with a half-smile. Suddenly, Elena's laptop vibrated with a notification. A new encrypted message flashed on the screen. She quickly deciphered it. It was the same pattern as children's codes. The message read, "Follow the sound of the water. I am here." Her heart stopped for a second. Marco. He was alive.
The sound of the generator reverberated off the concrete walls. When Elena opened her eyes, her head throbbed. She was strapped to a metal chair, her wrists bound by electronic restraint straps. A lamp hung above her, its light and shadow flickering like calculated torture. Across the room, a door opened. Wallace entered, impeccably dressed in his dark suit. "Elena Torres," he said with feigned courtesy, adjusting his wrists. "You've always had a knack for meddling where you shouldn't." She stared at him coldly. "Where's my brother?" He smiled, leaning in. "Dead, as you should be." Her heart clenched, but she wouldn't let the pain show on her face. "Lies," she replied. "If I were dead, you wouldn't need to hunt me." Wallace chuckled softly. "Faith is a beautiful thing. even when it's useless. He lit a cigarette, pacing in circles. Your brother infiltrated where he shouldn't have. He discovered things he wouldn't understand. Elena kept her gaze steady. How does the fact that you're the leader of the Gladio cell matter? Wallace froze for a moment. His smile vanished. You don't know what you're talking about. She took advantage of the silence and added, I have proof. Marco left it for me. Wallace let out a dry laugh, but his gaze betrayed something. Fear. And where is this evidence? Elena replied with only a half smile. Hidden, and the CIA system is already tracking it. The lie was audacious, but enough to unsettle him. He took a step forward, his eyes hard. You're just like him, she said scornfully. Idealistic, naive. They think they can change the system when the system and the only truth. He pressed a button on a remote control. The chair trembled with a brief electric shock. Elena bit her lip, stifling a scream. When the door closed, the sound of his footsteps slowly faded. Elena lowered her head, her body aching. Then she heard something, a subtle sound coming from above, like dripping. But it wasn't water. It was code. 3 short knocks, 2 long ones, 1 short one. Their code. Marco was there. Elena's heart raced. She looked up and saw a ventilation pipe in the ceiling. The beeping continued, the precise rhythm of the Morse code they had created as children. Each sequence formed a message. Stay calm. Cameras deactivated in 60 seconds. She tested the harness. The electronic bands were still active, but there was a fault in the side clasp. Marco always said, no system is perfect. Elena twisted her wrist until she felt the clasp release with a muffled click. The electric shock cut through the air, but she resisted.
As soon as she freed herself, she ran to the control panel and switched off the circuit breakers. The lights flickered, plunging the place into twilight. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the hallway. She hid behind a metal table, breathing softly. 2 guards entered, weapons drawn. One of them got too close. Elena struck him with the restraining baton and took his weapon. The second tried to react, but she fired. The sound reverberated down the hallway. The following silence was absolute. The adrenaline made her tremble, but she knew every second counted. He opened the door and followed the sound of the knocking. The path led to a narrow, spiraling staircase. At the top, a skylight was partially open. Outside, the cold morning wind cut through his skin. "Marco," he whispered. No answer, only the distant echo of helicopters. She continued following the code. The knocks were coming from a ventilation duct to the right. As she approached, she saw something that chilled her blood. A small, destroyed surveillance camera, and next to it, a device with the symbol only they used, a triangle inside a circle. Marco had been there recently. Inside the tube, there was a folded sheet of paper. Elena picked it up, her hands trembling. Inside, a handwritten message. Trust the sound of the water. East exit. Father safe. She could barely breathe. Marco was alive and trying to help her escape. He ran down the corridor, avoiding the patrols. In the distance, he heard a growing sound, the murmur of running water. He followed it until he found an open drainage grate. Without hesitation, he descended into the underground tunnel. The cold current swept him away, but it was freedom. She emerged from a channel north of the base. Coughing and soaked, she looked around. The horizon was beginning to lighten, tinged with gold. On the ground, a mark made of clay, their symbol, a triangle inside a circle. Marco was guiding her. Elena struggled through the drainage tunnel. The icy water lashed against her legs, and each step sounded like an echo of the past. When she emerged, she found herself before an arid landscape illuminated by the moon. At the top of a hill, an abandoned building stood out, a former CIA telecommunications station.
She recognized the place. Marco called it Oasis, the place where she kept everything she couldn't trust anyone with. Elena climbed cautiously, feeling the weight of destiny in every step. As she entered, dust rose like ghosts. In the center of the room, a monitor blinked with a single message. If you've made it this far, there's still time. Elena plugged the flash drive into the terminal. The system required two-factor authentication. She tried the code they used in childhood. M7E3. Access was granted. Videos and documents appeared on the screen. She clicked on the first file. The image showed Elena, exhausted, speaking directly to the camera.
If you're seeing this, Lena, it's because the plan failed. I uncovered Project Gladio, an insider CIA network that sells information to foreign governments. Wallace leads the operation. I infiltrated it to expose him, but now he's branded me a traitor. They're coming after you and your father. Elena brought her hand to her mouth, her heart clenching. The recording continued. Don't try to save me. I need you to live. If you can decipher everything, send the evidence to the ethics division. It's our only chance. The image shook. Marco looked directly at the camera, his voice trembling. And Lena, I never thought you were inferior. I only tried to keep you away from hell. The tears came silently. For the first time, she understood that all the rivalry was a reflection of his fear of seeing her die like so many others. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I won't leave you behind, she whispered. Suddenly, a metallic clang broke the silence. Elena drew her weapon and hid behind a table. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. A familiar voice called her name. Elena, it's me. She recognized the tone immediately. Marco? His figure emerged from the shadows. Disheveled hair, tired eyes, a recent wound on his shoulder. But it was him. You should be dead, he said with a weak smile. And you should be hiding, she replied, tears welling in her eyes. For a moment, time stood still. Two siblings, finally face to face after so much pain. Marco staggered toward her, leaning against the wall. I couldn't stay away, Lena. Wallace found out you were alive. He was coming to get you. Elena helped him sit up. I saw your recordings. I know everything now. He nodded, breathless. Then you understand why I had to pretend. If they think I'm dead, the plan continues. She watched him in silence. You always carried the weight alone, Marco. You always thought you needed to protect me. He smiled slightly. You were always stronger than me. It just took you a while to realize it. His words sounded like redemption. Suddenly, the sound of helicopters cut through the air. Marco looked out the window. They tracked us. We need to get out now. Elena grabbed her laptop and flash drive, putting everything in her backpack. Is there another way out? He nodded, pointing to the basement. An old tunnel leads to the canyon. If we can get there, we have a chance. As they descended, explosions shook the building. The ceiling began to give way. Come on, quick, Elena shouted. The narrow tunnel led them to a passageway lit only by emergency lights. There, two agents appeared, weapons raised. Elena fired first. Marco covered the rear. They crossed the corridor amid smoke and gunfire. The sound of the helicopter approached. When they reached the exit, they saw a cliff face before them and the abyss below. Elena hesitated. We're trapped. Marco grinned, pulling the detonator from his pocket. Then let's put on a show. She understood. The charges he had installed earlier, it was a contingency plan. Are you going to blow everything up? He nodded. Gladio needs to disappear, and that includes the station. Elena gripped his arm. You'll die if you do that. Marco stared at her, his gaze fixed. Maybe, but you'll live. She wanted to scream, but the sound of the explosion swallowed everything. The station collapsed, and the shock wave threw them to the ground. When the dust settled, Elena crawled to the edge of the cliff. Marco was no longer there. All that remained was her father's watch, fallen among the rocks. She picked it up with trembling hands, her heart broken. The symbol engraved on the lid, the triangle inside the circle, seemed to pulse in the dawn light. And then the familiar sound echoed among the rocks. 3 short beats, 2 long ones, 1 short one. Their code. Marco was still alive. The helicopter hovered over the canyon, swirling dust and smoke. Elena ran between the rocks, the sound of the propellers mixed with the high-pitched whistle in her ears. The impact of the explosion still made her dizzy, but instinct prevailed. "Marco!" she cried, her voice hoarse. No answer, only the echo of the rocks rolling down the cliff. She clutched her father's watch between her fingers. The metal was warm, pulsating, as if it held a life of its own. Deep down, she knew Marco was still alive. He had to be. But at that moment, there was no time to seek certainty. Rescue helicopters and CIA squads were closing in. If she were captured now, everything Marco had risked would be in vain. She downloaded the Project Gladio files directly to the CIA's internal system. The recordings, the videos, the reports, everything. The truth would be public, uncontrollable. When the upload finished, a message appeared on the screen. Transfer completed. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she felt Marco was there, silently watching. "We did it, brother." The distant sound of gunfire and explosions mingled with the bird song, returning with the dawn. Their secret war had finally come to an end. Hours later, Elena was found unconscious by an independent search team. When she awoke, she was in a military hospital, her body covered in bandages. An agent from the CIA's ethics division was waiting at the door. "Miss Torres," he said, "the evidence you sent changed everything. Wallace was arrested. Your brother was declared a hero." She looked away, her eyes welling with tears. "And the body?" The agent hesitated. "It hasn't been found yet." Elena nodded slowly. "Then he's not dead." The man didn't answer, but the silence confirmed her faith. Later, she walked to the window and watched the sunset. The golden reflection reminded her of the days when she and Marco played spies, believing the world could be deciphered. Now she knew that the truth came at a high price, and the price was always love. Weeks passed. The headlines dominated the screens. Corruption network at the CIA dismantled. Gladiator exposed. Photos of Wallace in handcuffs circulated around the world, and among them, a posthumous image of Marco Torres, awarded the Medal of Honor for sacrifice on a top-secret mission. Elena watched the ceremony on television, her face impassive, her heart in ruins. Her father watched silently beside her. "He always wanted to do the right thing," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. "But no one should have to die for that." Elena squeezed his hand. "He didn't die, Dad, I know." He looked at her with sad tenderness. "Then keep believing. That's what keeps him alive." That night, Elena returned to the old family chalet, now rebuilt. She kept Marco's watch, documents, and badge there. The house smelled of wood and memories. In the silence, longing seemed to speak to her, and every shadow reminded her of her brother's smile. She picked up the laptop and opened the final files of Project Gladio. Among them, she found a recording never heard before. Marco, wounded, speaking softly. "Lena, if the world knows the truth, perhaps there is hope. If it doesn't,
At least you'll know I was never against you." She paused the video, tears falling. "You were always with me." Outside, the wind blew the leaves, and the familiar sound, 3 short taps, 2 long ones, 1 short one, echoed, as if the world itself breathed their code. Elena smiled, a smile between pain and peace. The following morning, she left the cabin and handed in her resignation letter to the CIA. "The agency needs new ghosts. I've lived among them long enough," she wrote. The director read silently and simply replied, "Your brother would be proud." Back on the road, Elena drove aimlessly, the sun reflecting off the watch she now wore on her wrist, the same one that had belonged to her father. Each tick-tock seemed like a vivid memory, a distant call, and when she pulled over to the side of the road to catch her breath, she saw something glistening in the mailbox of an abandoned house.
An envelope with no return address. Inside, a piece of paper with a single sentence written in Marco's handwriting. "Don't look back. I'm alive." Elena smiled, tears mingling with the wind. For the first time in years, he felt that the world still held secrets, and that some were worth keeping. The wind cut through the ravine with the gentleness of an ancient whisper. Elena stopped the car at the side of the road, watching the horizon faded by the twilight. The envelope still rested on the dashboard, the phrase echoing in her mind. "Don't look back. I'm alive." She ran her fingers over the letters, recognizing Marco's firm stroke. Her heart, once in ruins, now beat with a new direction. In the following days, she began to follow the clues her brother had left hidden within the message. The initials E12 in the corner of the paper led her to an abandoned port on the Virginia coast, one of the CIA's former extraction points. The place was empty, except for a lit flashlight and a radio tuned to static. Elena approached, the sound of footsteps echoing off the damp concrete. She turned the radio dial, and the static turned to rhythm. 3 short beats, 2 long ones, 1 short one. Their code. A nervous laugh escaped her lips. "You never change, do you?" she murmured. Suddenly, the radio crackled, and a distorted voice rang out. "Lena!" The air left her lungs. It was him, Marco's voice, tired but alive. "If you're here, then you've succeeded. The world knows. I can't go back yet, but I'm close. I'll take care of you, as I always have." Elena brought her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back tears. "Where are you?" she whispered, but the radio responded only with static. Then another phrase came, like a distant echo. "Trust the sound of the water." Then silence. The same sound that had once united them in childhood, the stream where they invented their first codes. She looked around and saw the moon's reflection dancing on the nearby water. On the bank, something glistened. She walked over and found a small metal box. Inside, a photo of the 3 of them, her, Marco, and her father, taken in the backyard of their old house. On the back, a new message. "Family is the only code that can never be broken." Laughter and tears mingled. Elena sat by the water's edge, gazing at the horizon. The wind blew through her hair, and for the first time she felt no fear, only peace. The war was far away, but the bond remained alive, pulsing between invisible lines. As the sun rose, she put the photo and the watch in her pocket. She started the car and looked at the sea one last time. The radio, still crackling, emitted a final sequence of beats. Slow, measured, familiar. She smiled, murmuring, "See you later, Marco."